And the verses here, I think are very familiar, verses 26 through 28. It's just a foundational text. And of course, this text comes at the end of the first creation account, a very famous story here in chapter 1 up through, I would say, chapter 2, the beginning of verse 4 or so. It's highly stylistic in its literary construction. As you know, we've got 7 days, we've got seven appearances each of words like bara, create, seven appearances of the phrase God saw that it was good, seven appearances of and it was so. All right, so it's very poetic, I would say. And then you get to the sixth day here, verse 26 of Genesis 1. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens. There's that language from we saw in Psalm 8. And over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Verse 28. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. All right, so there's that language that is so important for our class and for really subsequent theology and thinking about humanity. And that is the image of God, the language there in verse 26. I will use this interchangeably with, and sometimes you will hear this from maybe some of our speakers, but in some of the readings, Imago Dei. That's just the Latin phrase, image of God. Imago Dei. Well, I think, have to acknowledge at the beginning here that the image of God, which I mean to talk about really for the rest of our time tonight, is not an unequivocal phrase or concept. First, the phrase is rare. In association with creation, it appears only 3 times in the Old Testament, all here in the early chapters of Genesis. So the assertion of humans being created in the image of God is present only in these verses. So Genesis 1, 26 through 28, chapter 5, verses 1 through 3, and then chapter 9, verse 6. If we have time, we'll look at those in a little bit. Second, where it does, so first it's rare. Second, where it does appear, there's no systematic description of what this is or what it means. It's never defined and it's not self-explanatory. Third, despite its infrequency and its ambiguity, Imago Dei has long been a sort of container for theological anthropology and a cipher for whatever noble quality we want to say about human nature. That is, we tend to pump into the phrase more than it ever spells out in any one text. That's okay as long as we understand what we're doing when we do that. So, the big question here is what does it mean to be made in or to or after or according to the image of God? Well, first, two very basic, inarguable points, but probably worth saying here. One, at the very least, the Imago Dei is meant to express the uniqueness of humanity in creation, right? All of these things are created, all of creation basically by the end of 6 days. But this special designation is saved for the last day of creation, the pinnacle of creation. The entire creation is good, but humans are unique. Man and woman enjoy a preeminent position within creation. So, whatever it means to say, it is meant as a very high praise. All right. Again, I think of Psalm 8's commentary on that. So, that's the first inarguable thing I will say about it. The second is that image suggests resemblance of some sort. An image is a reflection or a representation, maybe a physical representation of something else, a model, an archetype, in this case, God. All right. So, what then is the nature of this resemblance? Just digging in a little further here. What is the image of God in man? Is it physical? That might be the first question we want to ask because we are physical embodied beings. And you think of an image as a physical representation. Uh, the short answer to that is no. It's not our physical bodies, literally, crassly, or merely. We don't look like God, for there is nothing physical in the archetype to look at. God is incorporeal, that is, not a body. You might say, what about God's arms and eyes? Other things we hear about in the Bible. These are anthropomorphisms, all right? They are speaking about God in um, embodied and human ways, all right? We do that with, it's a figure of speech we do with other things as well. The biblical anthropomorphisms represent divine attributes and actions. So I said his arms and his eyes. That's his power and knowledge, respectively, usually. So, in this limited sense, since we act and see through the means of a body and its various parts, then in a limited sense, maybe our body does image God. Our ability to see, hear, communicate, know, and understand, made possible by our bodily senses, resembles God's ability to do all of these and more, apart, in his case, apart from any corporeal limitations. So you get the Torah's prohibition against making images, right? We think of the Decalogue. Why not make an image of God, especially? Well, God is not visible and he has no shape. The Deuteronomy, especially, and Exodus bring that out. But also, don't make an image of God because he already has an image. Man. Man is the image of God. No need to make something else. God's already made an image. And in that sense, even pagan idols and images were not necessarily meant, at least we think this is the case. Hard to get into the minds of ancient pagans, but especially for Egyptians, they weren't necessarily meant to look like the god. You could think they are, but they're mainly representing his qualities and his presence. In this sense, humans in the image of God are God's visible representatives in creation, particularly in quality and in presence. And so, if it's about God's qualities and presence, then there is something immaterial about the Imago Dei that's born about in the human body. All right. So, I hope that makes sense. It's not the body, but it is certainly born about in our body, necessarily so.